Hello everyone, I am Mr. Dread who is always telling you stories. Did you sleep well last night? Did you suddenly think of me? Or my stories in the dead of night? Okay, without further ado, let's start today's story. Do you know? There is an extremely mysterious and strange mountain in Taiwan. Even many locals stay away from it. They generally believe that it is an ominous place, because there have been so many bizarre incidents here that it is almost impossible to count them. Each one is creepy and terrifying. Some of these events even caused a sensation in Taiwan at the time, and people gave this mountain a daunting nickname, Black Qilai. So what happened here that year that made people so frightened? Let me take you to find out. This mountain, called Qilai Mountain, is located at the junction of Nantou County and Hualien County in Taiwan, with an altitude of 3,560 meters. It has a complex terrain, changeable climate, and is surrounded by clouds all year round, as if isolated from the outside world. Locals say that on certain days, they often hear strange sounds coming from the mountains, shrill, mournful, like whispers from the throats of ancient ghosts. What we are going to talk about today is a mysterious disappearance case that occurred in 1972 and shocked the whole of Taiwan. What's even more chilling is that many years later, some people still claim to have taken photos of those disappeared persons. August 24th, 1972 was an ordinary day, but it became a turning point in the fate of 3 college students, Leo, Ray, and Ken. The 3 of them are from different universities. Leo is a junior at Tung Hai University. Ray and Ken are students at Fujian Catholic University. They quickly became close friends due to their common love for mountaineering, and often get together to discuss mountaineering routes and share experiences. When they heard the strange legend of Qilai Mountain, they became particularly excited. For those who truly love adventure, the more challenging and unknown a place is, the more attractive it is to conquer. So, they hit it off and decided to challenge this mysterious mountain. Before setting off, they made extremely thorough preparations. Not only did they study the map in detail, they also contacted seniors who had climbed Mount Qilai before to get all kinds of practical advice. The 3 of them carried backpacks full of equipment and arrived at the climbing checkpoint of Mount Qilai in the early morning of August 24th, 1972, and completed the registration for entering the mountain. The staff at the time also specifically reminded them that the terrain in the mountains is complex, and if they encounter unfamiliar sections of the road, they must return as soon as possible. They smiled and nodded, responding easily, "Don't worry, we will be careful." No one expected that this would be the last adventure in their lives. From the moment they walked into the mountains, no one knew what they had experienced. In the days that followed, everything was strangely quiet. When the day they were supposed to leave the mountain passed, they still hadn't returned. The families of the 3 people began to become anxious. The first person to feel uneasy was Leo's father. 2 days before his child went missing, he had an extremely strange dream. In his dream, he saw his son walking into a dark forest with his back to him. He desperately called his son's name from behind, his voice almost tearing his throat, but his son seemed to be completely deaf to him, walking further and further away without looking back, and finally disappeared in the depths of the thick fog. Normally, he never believed in such dreams, but this time, it was about his own son, and the ominous premonition in his heart kept him awake all night. Finally, the day came to go down the mountain, but the child still hadn't returned. At that time, communication was not well developed, and he was unable to contact his child in time. Anxious, Leo's father quickly contacted Ray and Ken's families, only to find out that they also had no news of their child. A mysterious disappearance case that affected the entire Taiwan has thus begun. No one expected that this incident would become one of the most confusing unsolved mysteries in Taiwan's mountaineering history. On September 1st, 1972, Leo's father could no longer bear it and called the local police station, hoping that the authorities could help find the 3 missing students. However, the police officer who answered the phone did not take it seriously. He said lightly that in Taiwan, it is not uncommon for young people to get lost or delay in coming down the mountain. Most of the time, it is just because they are having too much fun and forget the time. Don't worry, he will be back soon. The other party comforted in a relaxed tone. But these words were like a bucket of cold water poured on Leo's father's chest. His premonition was clearer than anyone else's. This time was different. This was not just a simple loss of direction, not a playful one, and definitely not a small accident. He gripped the phone tightly, his palms sweating. He knew he had to act now, so he contacted Ray and Ken's family again. The parents gathered together in an increasingly uneasy mood, with a common fear hidden in each other's eyes. In the next few days, they took turns making phone calls and visiting the relevant departments almost every day to put pressure on them. Finally, on September 4th, the relevant departments officially filed a case and decided to launch a search and rescue operation. The investigators first retrieved the registration records for entering Qilai Mountain and confirmed that Leo and his 2 companions had indeed entered the mountain on August 24th. However, what was worrying was that there was no record of them leaving the mountain since then. The situation is much more serious than originally imagined. The Nantou police immediately formed a 12-member search and rescue team and prepared to go up the mountain the next day. However, in the early morning of September 5th, an anonymous phone call disrupted the original search and rescue plan. On the phone, a strange man claimed, "The 3 students are out of danger, have contacted their families, and are on their way back." The police were relieved after hearing this and decided to cancel the search and rescue operation. But they had no idea that this phone call was a complete scam. By September 10th, the 3 family members had completely lost their patience and went to the police station in person to question the search and rescue progress. The police then realized something was wrong. The so-called student who had returned home safely had never appeared. The anonymous phone call was completely false information. The faces of several police officers changed immediately. The already tense situation suddenly escalated at this moment. While tracing the source of the call, the police reorganized the team to search. The top brass of the police department did not dare to be careless this time. The newly formed search and rescue team set out again, and their first stop was the Mountaineering Management Office of Qilai Mountain, hoping to find any possible clues. When the manager heard the purpose of the visit, he immediately handed over a bunch of daily necessities and said, "These may have been left behind by the missing students." It turned out that on August 28th, the 4th day after the 3 people entered the mountain, a professional mountaineering team happened to enter the Qilai Mountain area. They found some scattered mountaineering equipment on the trail between Mount Carlolu and the main peak of Qilai. Backpacks, tents, food bags, and even some personal belongings. The team did not know that anyone was missing at the time, so they handed the supplies over to the management office, who also did not realize the importance of these items until today. After careful comparison, the police confirmed that these items indeed belonged to Leo, Ray, and Ken. This discovery made everyone feel depressed, because a true mountaineer will never casually discard life-saving supplies, such as tents and backpacks, unless they have faced some extreme situation. Perhaps they encountered sudden danger or even some power that they could not understand at all. With these clues, the search and rescue team began to search in depth along this route, searching every cave, bush, and even muddy low-lying area where someone might be hiding. However, the search and rescue process was far more difficult than they had expected. The terrain of Qilai Mountain is like a lurking beast, with dangers lurking at every step. Coupled with the sudden heavy fog and continuous drizzle, visibility is pitifully low. Thick water vapor enveloped the entire mountain, like a pair of invisible hands, obstructing every step of the search. The search and rescue team was forced to work in groups and move in different directions. They kept finding traces of people walking on the grass and scratches left by humans on the stones. But these fragmentary clues cannot piece together the complete truth. As time went on, the search and rescue efforts expanded, with the military also joining in, even sending helicopters to conduct aerial searches. Unfortunately, the forests here are too dense and the clouds are as thick as cotton. The helicopter can hardly see the ground in the air. The pilot can only circle in the sky, anxious but helpless. The search and rescue effort lasted for more than 2 months, with the number of people reaching hundreds at one point, but still no trace of the 3 people could be found. This massive operation became the largest search and rescue operation in Taiwan's mountaineering history. And hope, day by day, slowly becomes slimmer. Early morning of October 15th, 1972. The weather was as gloomy as if it was covered with a layer of lead, and the fog was so thick that water could almost drip out. A search and rescue team composed of local Atayal hunters is searching in a sparsely populated valley near the northern peak of Mount Qilai. The terrain of this valley is extremely complex and it is shrouded in thick fog all year round. Even experienced indigenous people rarely set foot in it. For this reason, this area was rarely included in the key search area before. That morning, the hunters were walking quietly through a thicket, and the thick fog seemed to stick to their faces, wet and cold. Suddenly, the captain stopped abruptly, pointed ahead, and said in a low but urgent voice, "Look, what is that?" Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. On the grass about 20 meters away from them, there were 3 pairs of chopsticks standing neatly in the soil. There is a small piece of red cloth tied to the pair of chopsticks in the middle, which looks like a sign of struggle when blown by the breeze. The captain looked solemn. He whispered that in Atayal culture, red cloth is a sign of seeking help. And this act of standing the object upright and facing the sky is usually seen as a symbol of praying for protection from ancestors or gods. 3 pairs of chopsticks may represent 3 people, he said. This made everyone's heart tighten. No one spoke anymore. Everyone held their breath and moved forward. They walked over carefully and found several items scattered around the chopsticks. A rain-soaked notebook, a broken compass, several empty grocery bags, and some scraps of cloth. The captain squatted down and opened the wet notebook. The paper was severely damaged and many of the words were blurred by water, making them almost unrecognizable. But on one of the pages, he vaguely saw a few words, "Isle." The handwriting was crooked, as if the person who wrote it was in extreme panic and fear, and the strokes were so forceful that they almost pierced through the paper. At that moment, the air seemed to freeze. That was not a casual travel note, but a struggle for survival. The news was quickly passed back to the search and rescue headquarters, and soon more search and rescue personnel arrived in the valley. They did not dare to slack off and immediately conducted a carpet search around them. About 50 meters away from where the chopsticks were inserted into the ground, they made another important discovery: a makeshift shelter hidden among trees and rocks. The shelter was very simple, made of branches, rock fragments, and a few pieces of clothing. It seemed to be a temporary and hastily built shelter. The clothes were identified by their family members and confirmed to be those worn by Leo, Ray, and Ken. There were still some gnawed food residues in the shelter, and several water bottles fell on the ground, with their mouths dry and cracked, and there was no water left. But what really makes people's scalp tingle is the strange scratches on a rock next to the shelter. The search and rescue personnel squatted down and took a closer look. These scratches were not caused by natural weathering, but were obviously man-made. I could barely make out a few words: danger and escape. Each word was carved deeply, with concave lines, as if great effort had been put into it. The handwriting was still crooked, as if it was carved stroke by stroke in extreme tension. At this moment, everyone understood. These 3 students tried to leave some kind of warning or a record of their final struggle. These strange clues quickly triggered various speculations from the outside world. Some believed that they may have encountered a serious accident, such as terrain collapse or an attack by wild beasts. Some people also began to believe that perhaps it was the mysterious power of the mountain that swallowed them up. Some old climbers mentioned a long-standing taboo among the Aborigines: demon god. This is a legendary mountain spirit that can cause people to lose their way and never return home. Some people even put forward more bizarre conjectures. Are they being targeted by some kind of unspeakable existence? Whatever the truth was, the search and rescue team did not give up in the following weeks. They extended their search along the valley and searched almost every possible escape route. But apart from the 3 pairs of chopsticks, the notebook, and the warning on the rock, there were no new clues. It was as if these 3 people were wiped out from the world in an instant. As time went by, the fog in the mountains became thicker and thicker, and the air was filled with the chill of late autumn. The weather was getting colder, the ground became slippery and steep, and the sound of the wind in the valley seemed to be whispering and crying. The search and rescue operation lasted for nearly 3 months, but there was no breakthrough. Despite the harsh environment that repeatedly hindered their operations, the search and rescue personnel and the students' families were unwilling to give up. They traveled through the mountains every day, calling out those 3 names over and over again: Leo, Ray, Ken. The echo drifted empty into the depths of the forest, and was finally swallowed up in the fog, with no response anymore. Some rescue team members began to have strange dreams when they were camping in the mountains at night. In the dream, there were whispers and figures standing quietly by the tree through the gap of the tent, but never approaching. An experienced old climber whispered, "There are more than just people living in the mountains." It was not until the spring of 1974, a full year and a half since the three men disappeared, the Taiwanese authorities finally announced a complete termination of the search and rescue operation. This case was officially classified as a mountain accident and missing persons incident. The three students were officially listed as missing persons and their files were sealed. No bodies, no witnesses, no truth. Even the mysterious phone call that brought false news at the most critical moment could never be traced back to its source. This missing case that once shocked the whole of Taiwan was quietly covered up. But things are far from over. 8 years later, in 1980, Qilai Mountain still stands there silently, weighing down the land. Its outline is like a crouching beast, sleeping, breathing, and staring at everyone who comes. By then, the disappearance case had long faded from public view, and only a few mountaineering forums occasionally discussed in low voices the three college students who never came down the mountain. And in this year, something happened that shocked the whole of Taiwan again. That autumn, a mountaineering club organized a trip to Qilai Mountain. The young college students were shocked by the vast grassland on the top of the mountain, and everyone took some photos excitedly. It wasn't until they returned to the city and developed the photos that one student suddenly noticed something was wrong. On the right side of one of the group photos, suddenly, there was a clear figure of a stranger. The man was wearing an old mountaineering jacket, with a stiff expression and his eyes staring straight into the camera. He stood straight, with no anger, sadness, or joy on his face, only a kind of inexplicably cold emptiness. It was as if he did not belong to the picture, yet he was much clearer than everyone else. The photo quickly went viral and the news also reached Ray's mother. She almost ran towards the store where the photos were being developed and immediately recognized the figure. "That's my son. That's Ray." Her voice was trembling, but extremely firm. She even pointed out that the jacket was a mountaineering gift she had asked a friend to buy for her son from abroad. It was a limited edition worldwide, and there was no way I could have made a mistake. Everyone was silent for a moment. Ray in the camera, standing in the mountain that they thought had been sealed long ago, seemed to have walked out of the cracks in time, but he did not belong to any world. And this is not the strangest thing about Qilai Mountain. As early as 1971, 1 year before the three students disappeared, 7 college students went to Mount Qilai to climb the mountain. A typhoon suddenly hit them on the way and 5 of them died. In order to commemorate the 5 deceased, the survivors and teachers and students of the same school petitioned the school and eventually built the Success Fort shelters number 1, number 2, and number 3 in the mountains. On the day the shelter was completed, the department head led a team up the mountain and hung black and white photos and commemorative plaques of the 5 students on the wall. But from then on, the story of Success Castle began to become less simple. Once, a mountaineering team encountered a storm at night and had to temporarily take refuge in the Success Fort. Late that night, the wind was howling and the rain was pouring. When several climbers were about to go to sleep, there was a knock on the door. Thinking it was some other lost climber, they opened the door. Outside the door stood 5 young men with dull expressions, soaking wet, who walked into the house without saying a word. At first, the 2 sides tried to talk, but the 5 people didn't say a word the whole time, just lowered their heads, quietly packed up their bedding, and sat in the corner. The atmosphere gradually became weird and no one dared to talk anymore. Until the next morning, only the original team was left in the house. The 5 young men disappeared like mist. Even more terrifying is that before the climber walked out of the shelter, he took a look at the photo hanging on the wall. Those 5 black and white photos were the 5 faces I saw last night. Do you think this is the limit? No. Around 1974, a soldier stationed at the Qilai security fort suffered a sudden mental breakdown after a stormy night shift. He trembled and muttered, "That woman in white. She was smiling at me in mid-air." In 1985, a mountaineering team took a group photo after descending the mountain. In the developed photo, a strange face appeared in the corner, facing the camera with a strange grin. But when taking the photo, everyone said, there was clearly no one around at the time. In 1992, a photographer went up the mountain alone to photograph the natural landscape. He lost contact for 3 days, and when the search and rescue team was about to enter the mountain, he suddenly appeared. He looked confused and said, "I only spent 1 night in the mountains." To this day, Qilai Mountain remains one of the mountains in Taiwan with the highest number of missing persons cases each year. Navigation, walkie-talkie, signal stick. No matter how much preparation you have, it cannot defeat its mystery. Every year, some people lose contact here, some fall off the cliff, some get lost, and some people just never return home. Okay, that's all for today's story. What do you think of this mountain called Black Qilai? Are all these strange things accidents, coincidences, or is there really something waiting for you in the mountains? Tell me what you think. I am Mr. Dread, the friend who always accompanies you with stories. If you like today's story, please like and subscribe. Or, if you have experienced something similar, please tell me in the comments. See you next time.